Philip, thank you for taking part in the opening plenary session there of the Scottish Assembly for Tackling Poverty. What's your reaction, having just taken part in that? What did you think of the debate?
Well, I thought at first, initially, it was going to be a standard, we need more state, more welfare spending, more kind of income supplementation, which I think is depressing and will just make the poor poorer over time. But I think at the panel debate we really opened it up about actually we need a radical new approach, and we don't want welfare economies because they're not sustainable in the long run.
Sure.
And what we need is a new type of economy and a new type of welfare. And I thought that really, in a really sort of productive way, both the audience and the panellists were open for like asset approaches, for issues around education. Crucially, even though the big society is always vilified, actually there were very big society type approaches. We need to push budgets out to communities. We need to understand that the state captures power and agency. And if we can create the conditions for communities to come together, that's one of the preconditions for solving poverty. Yeah. So I emerged from the debate actually really thinking we had one, and the reaction's been rather positive, so it's been delightful.
Yeah, great. I think that agenda of community empowerment, of trying to release community assets is growing. Certainly it is in Scotland, I'm sure it is in the rest of the UK. What are maybe some of the barriers you see to really achieving all that policy agenda could give?
I suspect, and I may be wrong, but you need a critique of the state if you're really going to empower communities. Now that doesn't mean it's anti-state, but it means you have to have a sense that actually if you just give power to professionals who are the only people who are active and everybody else is passive, then you won't ever really empower communities. So I think what Scotland needs to develop in its own traditions is a critique of the limits of the state.
Yeah.
Now what we have in Britain, particularly with the localism bill, is some very interesting powers. You have the right to challenge, so you can take over the money spent on you. The government is running various pilot schemes around area-based budgeting, ways in which we can group all the different expenditure in an area, social work, crime, so on, and allow communities to take that over. So I think that what's lacking in Britain is community, because they're so fragmented, they're so shattered. Perhaps what's lacking in Scotland are the powers for a community to take over agency from the state.
Yeah.
So I think that's what's required in both contexts. Britain, we have to rebuild community in order that it can have the capacity to deliver for itself. And in Scotland, we have to develop an account of what the state can't do.
Yeah, and how do we maybe go about because that is, for me, one of the biggest barriers about how we achieve that community assets agenda, that many of the institutions that bound communities together, whether it's a church or whether it's trade unions or local clubs and societies, they've really fragmented and disappeared in some communities. How can we replace that?
Well, I think you have to begin from common shared problems. Because everybody lives in a place, in a neighbourhood, everybody kind of experiences what that neighbourhood has or doesn't have. And if you can create an awareness of shared problems, then you're halfway to bringing people together to find solutions. So I think every individual is always within a community in a context. And if it's a nice community, a nice context, they can probably survive quite happily as an individual. But that's why the community agenda is more radical, because if you're at the bottom of the heap, or if you're kind of further down the socio-economic scale, you experience what it means not to be in a community. You pay a much higher price.
Indeed.
So therefore, I think the need for community organising or communities to come together is much more pressing in our poorer communities. And those problems are very real. But there are leaders. No community is without its leaders. You know, you have the church, you have a local authority that kind of has responsibility, but perhaps isn't good enough for engendering bottom-up responses. And you have housing associations who are absolutely crucial. So there's lots of people in there. No society is utterly devoid of possibility. And I think that we just have to work with people who give a damn in those areas. And I think that's how you build.
Great. Thanks very much. Well,
Real pleasure.
We're hopefully working with a lot of people who are giving a damn. So
yes, of course you are.
We'll see where this goes from here.
Right.
Thanks
Real
very much.
pleasure. Thank you very much.
Great.
Cheers.
Thank you.